Thanks, Anthony. Good morning, everyone. I'm clearly not Gary Crockford, who has been leading this project for the last 2 years, nor do I have his charm or his presentation skills. So I will try doing justice in this presentation. Today we're talking about the Connected Services Architecture, which is a research and development program we've been doing in collaboration with DFT for the last 2 years. Just a bit of an intro on myself. I'm a senior consultant at WSP, and both Gary and my director, Jonathan Mann, are in the crowd today. So if you want to come talk to us about this. I think before getting into the project, I really wanted to do a bit of a nod to a lot of the great initiatives which are happening across DFT right now. I've been in this industry for 3 years, and I think it's really cool to see how technology and transport is converging with each other. As you've seen from the past presentations, there's really good stuff happening, and I think Anthony has said in past presentations, there's this concept of a one network vision, which is bringing these initiatives together and really realizing the benefits across the wider sector. And obviously you've got things like the AV legislation, which is around the corner, DTROs, which is quite exciting, and I'm sure Michael is going to touch on Roadster tomorrow, funny enough. So I think what I at least have seen in the last 3 years is that there's been a lot of presentations on connected vehicles, connected services, and just for those who don't know, we're fundamentally talking about the exchange of data between vehicles, infrastructure, and other devices in a dynamic way. But I think as we've been delivering this project, what we've realized is that there's little point talking in terms of technology. When you look at the private sector, technology is changing very rapidly. We're seeing that with AI. We're seeing that across a wide range of other sectors. And I think instead we need to speak a common language that both key decision makers, whether it be within central government, across other organizations, can actually relate to. So what we do when we talk to stakeholders, we say, okay, what can connected services do to meet your strategic goals, benefits, and wider vision? So as part of this project, we did a massive benefits mapping exercise. We looked at DFT strategic goals. We looked at strategic goals from other highway authorities, both national highways and LHAs. And we also looked at the private sector, and we tried to amalgamate these together into 5 core benefits. And we used this to test to stakeholders, what can connected services offer to actually meet some of these? So you obviously have safety, efficiencies, increased public transport use, and net zero, all key government related agendas on that we're seeing today and tomorrow. And I think the reason why we talk about benefits is because these are not going to change that much in the next few years. We're all just kind of striving towards that vision, particularly with things like net zero. So I think it's really important to remind ourselves, why do we talk about these technologies? Well, it's to actually try and meet these benefits. So I just wanted to do a bit of a nod as to a lot of the great work that's been happening in this space. You've seen National Highways with their digital road strategy, which has a clear vision for using connected services and leveraging connected vehicles to get data from their infrastructure into the vehicle. You've got the Zenzik roadmap, which clearly shows a pathway for connected vehicles and with the potential to obviously support autonomy. And you've got the Connected Vehicle Data Research Report, which I think showed some really good insights as to what are some common services that the UK might see soon, and what are some perhaps next steps that government can maybe take on board. We've obviously got the CAM 2025 paper, which was, I think, published nearly a year ago. And while that is more centered around autonomy, it does show a role for connected services. And I think this is a bit before my time, but there was the A2M2 trial, which actually showed that technology can actually work in a large pilot environment. So I think it's we asked ourselves across department, across our team, is there something missing that complements these and brings these together? I think for me, what I've seen is that there's a lot of strategy saying that we're going to do X, Y, Z, but how do we actually bring those links from strategy to innovation and research, to business as usual. And I think that's been a gap that we're trying to answer. So I think in response to that problem, we came up with a primary problem statement that DFT can really get behind and try answer, which is, as DFT, what do we need to potentially guide, standardize, regulate, and legislate to enable a connected services ecosystem and market to operate and flourish? So in response to that, what we've done for at least the last year is talk to a wide range of stakeholders, gathering their views, and the end goal is to actually develop a set of interventions with DFT that both them and their stakeholders can champion, which is actually going to bring all these strategies together that I showed in the previous slide and actually get connected services to business as usual. So we've talked to a lot of stakeholders, and I think stakeholder engagement lasted around a year for us. It was quite a heavy exercise. Some of you in the room right now, you might remember we did come talk to you, and we really, we welcome ongoing discussions. And I think this slide really is a kind of testament to us trying to cover the different sectors, so not just your national highways, your central government, but also some of the private sector. You'll see some of the MNOs there at the bottom. We had really good conversations with SMMT on this as well, and we've even spoken to Topaz to understand a bit more about the infrastructure-related problems that they were facing. And I think it's about bringing these together and understanding what are the common challenges that everyone is facing. So we did a bit of horizon scanning. We did a mixture of surveys, one-on-one interviews, workshops. I might be corrected, but I think we spoke to nearly 35 different organizations, nearly more than 100 individuals. And what we did was try and understand those pain points that everyone is facing. Do you see an opportunity for connected services? What do you think are the gaps? So things like data, security, strategy and innovation, lack of leadership, all different things that different people think are the main issues. And I think from the department's perspective, it's very much about understanding where are the common threads. And that's what we did. So we listened to stakeholders and we came up with 4 development areas. So these are areas which we are now investigating in further detail. And some of this was also informed on engagement we had with other countries. I think it's fair to say the UK is perhaps a bit behind other countries when it comes to the deployment of connected services. So we actually tried to look at the best practice happening across those countries and see how we can take them into a UK context. So the first one is roles and responsibilities and governance. Very crucial. And I think we've seen that for those who know the project. There's a project called Data for Road Safety, which is around using safety-related data and exchanging that with different partners in the ecosystem to create those benefits. And what we learned there is that you need a sustainable governance model that people can kind of really join into, almost like a rules of the game. The second item, which was very interesting and not many people thought of, was security and trust. I think, as vehicles are becoming more interconnected, particularly with infrastructure, we're seeing a lot of those threats, which have been traditionally vehicle-centric, starting to go more towards the infrastructure side as well. And we just did a piece of work with National Highways to bring that to light and start communicating those issues across the wider business. The third one, which I'll touch on a bit later, is network connectivity and coverage and data exchange. Now, one of the big elephants in the room is obviously coverage, the quality of coverage, and what is actually needed for connected services, depending on the service you want. So there's going to be safety critical services which need to have low latency. Is current coverage adequate for that? That's something which hasn't really been looked into. And then the final one, which I think is really important, is technical standards, which I think very much underpins how we do particular things. And I think that's an area that DFT particularly are keen to look into a bit more. So what I just talked about was almost stage 1 of our program. And we've packaged everything I've talked about into a very interactive, almost like a playbook, almost navigating the connected services architecture and understanding the different components, the different problems stakeholders face, and really dig in deep into those 4 development areas I showed earlier. We're hoping for that to be published on the TTF soon. I know it's just going through ministerial approval, and as you can probably guess, there are more pressing issues in the UK at the moment than connected services. But if you use the barcode there, this will bring you to our survey, which is also within this interactive document. This is a survey for everyone where we're really keen to understand your views and thoughts in relation to those 4 development areas. And this is a continuous research and development program where we're doing stakeholder engagement from end to end. So I'm sure the slides will be distributed afterwards, but if you get a chance, do scan the barcode, and we're really keen to listen to your thoughts. So where are we now? I think we set out almost like a four stages or 3 stages, where stage 0 was all around building an internal case to do this research and development program. Stage 1 was very much what I talked about today, where we listened to stakeholders, try and understand those challenges and gaps. And now we are currently at stage 2, where we are deep diving into particular development areas, those 4 boxes I showed earlier, where we're going to start working with DFT, also wider areas in DFT, not just traffic technology department, but also perhaps the science and technology division, and actually see if we can come up with a set of potential interventions that DFT or their stakeholders can champion, which is going to create that change in the market. And then the final stage, stage 3, which is pending, once we finish stage 2, is to not necessarily have a strategy, but really set the tone across the UK on where we see the potential for connected services, what we need to do to meet that potential, to meet those benefits, which I showed earlier, and actually really open up that market, starting to see services come into the market as business as usual, like we're seeing in other countries. So I mentioned before, for stage 2, we're deep diving into particular development areas. And whilst we're waiting for our document to be published on the TTF, we try to understand what can we do now in the short term to start addressing some of these gaps. So we decide to focus on network coverage and data exchange. And I think this aligns quite well with what Michael's doing in Roads to Tomorrow. It aligns with several other kind of schemes across DFT. And funnily enough, the challenges we see around connectivity and coverage is not just within the connected services domain. EV charge points are also a good practical example of where when coverage lacks, there can be some issues. And something I read this morning is that there are some startups in the US who are trying to do remote automated vehicle driving who have just gone bust because they've realized that connectivity is lacking in certain areas for the business model. So we're very much focusing on this for the next 12 months. And I just wanted to just talk a bit more about stage 2 and what we're going to try to achieve. So the fundamental, almost sub-problem statement we're trying to answer is current connectivity, or is open data that kind of describes connectivity and coverage adequate enough for the market to use and plan connected services? Now, when you go online and you look at connectivity coverage maps, there almost seems to be quite a few different ways that data is presented. And I think there's an open question out there, which is to what level of granularity does the data need to be, particularly coverage data, for the market to actually plan these services ahead? So what we are planning to hopefully do in the next 3 to 4 months is we're thinking of setting up almost an optioneering workshop across other DFT stakeholders and also experts within the connectivity field. And we're going to try brainstorm together, get our heads together, and understand what interventions can DFT champion to actually get this going. And at the end of this, what we're going to do is start building a business case. So we're going to follow the traditional 5-step case, starting with the strategic case. And hopefully in stage 3, we'll be able to really bring that to full business case, get whatever funding might look like to actually break down those challenges that we see for that particular development area. Now, this doesn't mean we are ignoring the other 3 areas like governance, security, and standards. What we've just seen is that what can we do now in the short term? We wait for our document to be published, and then we're going to hopefully start looking at those other development areas. So this is very much a growing piece of work, but we really welcome the discussion and opinions. So thanks very much. Both myself, Jonathan, and Gary were in the corner of the room today. And if you'd like to come speak to us, our doors are open. So thanks very much.